Slovakia is a small country, but because it lies in the very heart of Europe, it's incredibly rich in archaeology, sites, cultures and discoveries that spans tens of thousands of years. As time passed, people came and went, they settled the land, moved through it, built, hunted, created and lived their lives here. And when they left, they didn't disappear without a trace. What remained were fragments, tools, broken bones, ornaments, quiet traces of stories waiting to be rediscovered. And today we are going to follow one of those stories. Čertová Pec, Radošina, Western Slovakia. The Považský Inovec mountains rise gently along eastern bank of the Váh river in the western Slovakia. From south to north, the low hills slowly transform into higher terrain, cut through by the natural passes and corridors. These mountain passes have always mattered. They make movement easier, not just for people, but for animals as well. And where the animals move, hunters are never far behind. The site we're exploring today lies right at the mouth of one of these corridors. On the southeastern foothills of the Považský Inovec, a 12-meter high cliff opens into a cave just a few dozen of meters from the busy modern road linking the Váh River Valley with the Nitra Basin. This cave is known as a Čertová Pec, which means in English Devil's Furnace. Čertová Pec wasn't a place used only once and forgotten, quite opposite. It was used almost continuously right up into the modern times. During the Middle Ages and the early modern period, it served as a refuge from the raiding enemies. In sudden bad weather, it offered shelter to the shepherds and their herds. And during the final months of Second World War, the cave even functioned as a temporary hideout for the partisans. And when the place is used for centuries, there is a good chance it was useful much earlier too. That assumption led researchers from Archaeological Institute of Slovak Academy of Science to carry out systematic excavations here between years 1958 and 1961. What they found exceeded expectations. Čertová Pec became the first cave in Slovakia where 3 Paleolithic layers were discovered in the clear superposition. At the top, Gravetine layer. Below it, poorer but important Seletine layer. And at the bottom, the oldest Mousterian layer, so culture connected mainly with Neanderthals. Together, they tell a story of human presence stretching back tens of thousands of years. So let's jump straight into the deep past. The Mousterian layer associated with Neanderthals contains a variety of stone tools, side scrapers, Mousterian point, borers, and both pointed and flat flakes. These were made primarily from quartz and radiolite. And here is detail that matter. The nearest known radiolite sources are located near the Vlár Pass, Vlárský priesmik, roughly 60 kilometers from Čertová Pec. The distance alone tells us something important. These Neanderthals were not isolated. They moved through the landscape, knew it well, and they carried materials across it. Above the Mousterian layer lay the Seletine layer, identified thanks to the characteristic leaf-shaped point. This layer also contained a fireplace. Charcoal from the fireplace was radiocarbon dated to 38,320 years plus minus 2,480 years before the present. Why is this important? Because it was the first absolute chronological date for Seletian culture, and not only in the Slovakia, but also in Czech Republic. And the story doesn't end here. Just over the mountains, about 7 kilometers away, roughly a 2-hour walk, lies another Seletian site at the Moravany nad Váhom, known as Dlhá. There, the culture is represented by stone points, short distance on the map, but maybe a reminder that Paleolithic landscape were connected spaces and not isolated dots. The Paleolithic sequence at the site is closed by a layer associated with the Gravettian, an iconic culture of Upper Paleolithic, commonly linked in our imagination with the hunting of the Ice Age symbol, the mammoth. At this site, the Gravettian is represented by a relatively weak layer, suggesting that the hunter stayed here only briefly and that settlement probably had just one phase. The finds include blade-like flakes, partially retouched blades, and scrapers. One of the most intriguing finds from this layer is a collection of sawn gastropod shells, from which necklace could be reconstructed. Since the shells occur in various stages of modification from uncut pieces to different fragments, it's likely that shell processing took place directly at the site. During this period, Čertová pets probably served as a workshop for ornaments and amulets. Pendants and necklaces made from the perforated gastropod shells were quite popular, and we know examples from Dolní Viestonice, and in the way the tradition never really ended. Even today we still wear necklaces made from shells. The Paleolithic still reaches into the present. Just as important is the close proximity of sites on the opposite side of the Považský Inovec mountains, such as Banka, Moravany nad Váhom, and Ratnovce, all connected with Gravettian culture. Together, these places form a wider prehistoric landscape rather than isolated points on a map. The total number of finds from all three prehistoric cultural layers is relatively modest. These suggest that the cave was never permanent Paleolithic settlement or camp, but rather temporary hunting stop or a short-term shelter, yet the significance of Paleolithic activity at the Čertová pets is reinforced by its strategic location in the mountain pass through the Inovec range. These paths represent a prehistoric road connecting the Váh river basin with the lower Nitra region, used not only by human hunters, but also by migrating animals. Seen this way, the cave was more than just a shelter. Alongside everything else, it likely served as a waypoint, a brief pause on a long journey through a landscape shaped by movement, survival, and opportunity.